Hey YouTubers, 95 Speed GTA. Tonight we are using my Sony HDR PJ10 video camera. So if it looks good, that's the camera. Tonight, unfortunately, this is a project I really didn't want to do. I have to do the intake manifold gasket on my 1995 Pontiac Grand Prix. I'm going to be putting it on my YouTube channel, but if you're watching this, be sure to check out my new website, which is www.95speedgta.com. It's pretty much my YouTube username, but has a .com after it. So how do intake manifold gaskets go? Well, generally, intake manifold gaskets, they don't usually go. There are certain vehicles where the intake manifold gaskets were designed poorly, like my Grand Prix, and any of you out there that has a W body, a Lumina, a Grand Prix, a Chevy Impala, or anything with the 3100, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So let's take a look and see, and I'll show you guys what happens when your intake manifold gasket goes. So let's take a look. Ugh. If you ever pull your, well, if you ever take off your oil cap and you see this, you got a very big problem. This is when the oil mixes with the antifreeze. This is really bad. This is really bad for the motor. Now, make sure this is cold. Sometimes you got to push in and turn them. This ain't so bad, but it was worse the other day when I pulled it. It pretty much looked like that. And of course there's no coolant in there. Now, the first thing that everybody usually checks is the dipstick. Yep, the dipstick oil is not brown, it's not black, but it's like a creamy oatmeal color. That right there is an intake manifold gasket failure. Every once in a while, that could be a head gasket failure, but the head gasket didn't go on my car. But if you're unsure on how to tell on whether or not your head gasket went on your car, or it was your intake manifold gasket, there's a couple of ways that you could do that, and here's how. Certain automotive parts stores, or just specialty automotive tool stores, they sell something, a chemical kit that goes on top of your radiator, and it's actually a chemical procedure to where you squeeze like this bulb on top of two glass containers with chemicals in it, and what it does is it actually draws up gases in from the engine. So basically what it does is, let's say your head gasket goes bad. When your head gasket goes bad, what happens is exhaust gases will get into your cooling system. And this is a pretty efficient way of telling your head gasket is blown, because when you get a chemical reaction, the fluid is blue, and when you're pumping the bulb like this, it sucks the air in, and if the chemical turns like a yellow color, that means you need a new head gasket, because there are exhaust gases mixing in your coolant. Or taking out one of the spark plugs and looking for coolant. Usually when you take out the spark plugs, if it's an internal leak, it'll be covered in coolant. And you can also do a compression test to see what the compression is of your engine. Usually a bad head gasket will have lower compression. Another way to tell if your head gasket went is head gaskets usually blow in two ways. They blow internally, which mixes the antifreeze in with the combustion chamber, and what that does is it'll blow pure white smoke out of your exhaust. Or what'll happen is, in between your cylinder head and your engine block, you'll see it leaking out the side. And finally, another way is very similar to this. You'll see it on your dipstick. So now that we know what the problem is, let's start tearing this thing down. First of all, before you work with the electronic system in the car, even though the ignition is off, what you want to do is you want to disconnect the negative battery terminal We have the GM cars here, we have the side post terminals, and this is a really cool tool, and I think you could find it online. I actually found this in my travels, but this is a tool just for the GM side post batteries, and all you do is go down. You want to get the car up on jack stands, which I put them up on jack stands, but I didn't put them up on the cradle because I want to check some things out on suspension. Another thing about these W bodies is they're known for their cradle mount bolts and the rubber mount bushings to go bad, so I figured since I was under here I can check things out. So what we're going to do is, if you have the original oil plug, you're going to want to get a 16 millimeter, a 15 millimeter, and you want to get the oil / water out of your engine. You definitely do not want this shit in your engine any more than it's already been. So let's see how much shit's in there. I'm actually pretty nervous right now. Oh, great. That's bad. That's real bad. You know what that means? That means this stuff has been in here a long time and I've been driving around for a long time with it like this. Now, since we're waiting on the oil, well, the sludge, whatever you want to call it, to drain out of the engine, what we're going to do is we're going to inspect the spark plugs. We're going to let this guy drain out overnight because I put the oil plug back in when I drained the oil filter out. I took the oil filter out and I took it back out again, and this thing is still dripping, so I'm going to leave this under the car. I'm going to leave that open and let it drip overnight. Alright, so this is pretty much what the engine bay looks like. Complete, that is. You get your air box, you got your windshield washer fluid, and you have your strut bar. It's known as a lot of things. These are the slang automotive term for it is called dog bones. These are basically, they're called torque strut arms. Okay, we got this, and everything else I mentioned, we're going to get it out of the way. And I set them off to the side. I take the bolts off and I set this whole thing off to the side because you don't want to scratch the bumper or anything like that. I mean, if the car's a real piece of shit, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the owner won't care. But these are 14 or 15 millimeter. Make sure you have your, I don't have the exact size. Make sure you have your, a whole metric set, because that's pretty much all you're going to be using. Your windshield washer fluid. You don't necessarily have to take this out, but it's just annoying for it to be in there. Bolts. They're plastic, and what you do is you could take a flathead screwdriver and you could pry from underneath here, or they have this tool that looks like a screwdriver that just goes in and you pry it out. And what you're going to do is there's going to be one more bolt holding it on, and it's going to look something like this. You're going to want to get your 10 millimeter out. I'm pretty sure it's 10. What you do is you want to get to this final screw that's back here. So with this out of the way, you're going to take this and grab it by the sides, and you're going to simply lift it up like this and move it away. You see how much this is in the way? This is why, just remove it. Then you're going to take your 10 millimeter, and right down here you're going to see the bolt that attaches it. Once you remove it, take your fingers, and there's going to be a connector right here for the windshield washer fluid motor. Disconnect it. You just lift the terminal and pull up. Once you do that, you're going to lift it up, and you're going to get it out of the way. Alright, just to let you guys know, the bolts that this strut tower support is held in by is actually a 13 millimeter. So just want to verify that with you. When you take these off, you want to be really careful. You want to be really careful to ease these out, because I've seen on these W bodies a lot of the time, I've seen these bolts on the strut tower break. So really ease this bolt out, and if you feel that it's coming loose like really quick, then all of a sudden it tenses up, switch it, start tightening it back in just a little bit, then walk it back out again like this. And if you could lift it up like this far, get some WD-40 or my favorite PB Blaster, or leave it down here and just saturate the threads, because it sounds like you got a stuck bolt and you don't want to break this bolt off. Next on the list is the air box. Now, on the air box, it's held in by a metal bracket. I don't have the metal bracket on my car, but there's a metal bracket that hangs out over here, and it goes across the battery, okay? And there's a bolt that holds it in. So you can see the metal bracket, and there's going to be I believe it's a 10 millimeter bolt holding it in here. And then there's going to be the battery tray bolt holding in the other part of the metal bar that goes across here. Then there's going to be another bolt that's holding in the air box. So what you want to do is you want to remove that, which I'm going to take you guys off for a second. One's going to be right here. Then there's going to be one down there. And then there's going to be another bolt holding in the air box. Once you get that taken care of, you're gonna take a flathead screwdriver, and you're gonna loosen the flathead screw on this clamp right here until you get enough leeway to where you can wiggle it off the air box. Then we're gonna remove the air box. Be careful taking this thing out. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass, because you're gonna see it's got this little let me see if you guys can see. It's got this little extension down here that goes in underneath the radiator core support. So pretty much what you want to do is, once you get this out of the way, you want to lift up and pull back, and it'll come out just like that. You take your flathead screwdriver and you're going to loosen this as well. Take that off. Okay, make sure you don't crack that. There's a sensor right here. I think it's the IAT sensor, I think it's called, or the air temperature, whatever. It's going to be plugged in. Same kind of a plug like the washer fluid. Once you take it off, you're going to want to wiggle it off, and it comes off. Guys, sometimes these are very difficult to get off because they've been on there forever. So what you want to do is, once you loosen these up, and if it gives you a hard time coming off, take a flathead screwdriver and pry in between here, and just try to go around as best as you can. Or take the screwdriver, pry it up a little bit, and shoot some PB Blaster in there to get it loosened up. Next, we're going to take off these dog bones. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. When some people take the engines out of these things, they just do the 3 bolts here, throw it up, throw it up. What we're going to do here is we're going to have to get these totally out of the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take them off here, and we're also going to take them off here, because a torch sometimes is your best friend, because it heats up the bolt and keeps bolts from breaking. Now, these are the torque strut mounts. They keep your engine from jumping forward when you put the car in gear. So these are pretty important. And I don't care what anybody says. If you break one of these bolts, it's not a good thing. The manufacturer designed this car to have 3 bolts here for a reason. So we don't want to half-ass anything. So if you got a lot of rust here, or if you're trying to turn a bolt and it's coming really slow, but you feel like it's stuck and none of the threads are exposed, take your torch and heat it up just a little bit. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to sit there and hold it and burn the stickers and everything like that, because you don't want to do that or bubble the paint. Just hold it on here, just to get it hot enough, just to heat them up a little bit. Because when you heat them up, that really helps out a lot. Test that theory. when you're taking it off like this, you feel how it's got a little restriction? Well, take this. Now go ahead and try it, and you'll see how easy it comes off. Look at that. And you don't want to break a bolt. And if you don't have a torch, like I said, you can spray it with the PB blaster, and you just walk them out. A little bit like this, you switch it, a little bit like this, then back again. And you'll see when you walk them out, everything's safe. Okay, here's where we break out a open-end wrench. Get yourself a 15mm, and we're going to take these off. What we do is we get on this side, we'll crack it loose. Let that fall down. Take this. Make sure when you take these guys off, you put the bolt through, nut and bolt through, leave it on. Make sure you mark it, passenger side and driver's side. I like to put everything back where they belong. Next thing you want to do is you want to take the ignition wires off, because you're going to need them out of the way. Now, so you don't confuse yourself, on the car there should be it tells you what coil is what. Here's the ignition coil. So the one all the way to the left is for the cylinders number 5 and 2. The one in the middle is for 3 and 6, and the one all the way to the left is 4 and 1. So all you really have to do is just follow these wires to the coil pack, which on the 95 3100 is right here. Get yourself some blue tape and a marker. Mark each wire. And if you're lucky enough to have the wire retainers still, you take a flathead screwdriver and you push in on the middle part right here, or you could stick it right in here and pry it up, and it comes right up. And then you remove the ignition wires. Be sure to label them, and if you do get the wires mixed up, remember, most of us have this diagram right here that tell you what coil pack does each cylinder. And if you don't know what cylinder is what, you can easily get that online. So, you got to get to the back ignition wires and spark plugs when you want to do a tune-up. So I want to share something with you guys that I've been doing on these W-Body Grand Prix for a long time. And all you really need is a 2x4 block of wood, or a 4x4 block of wood, whatever you can get back there. And what you do is when you take the dog bone off, or even you don't have to take the dog bone if you release it in the opposite way, like let's say you're doing a tune-up on it and you need to get to the back. What I do is I take these high-strength tie straps and I hook it up like this. It goes in through here, and then this part rests up against here, and the strap itself goes through here just like a chain would and onto the ratchet, and this side is right onto the bolt, so this ain't ever gonna come loose or anything like that. And the ratchet, this is a safety one, so it's secured. You don't have to worry about anything. And when you're done and when you want to release it, you take I don't know where it went. You take your 2x4 or 4x4 block, put it right behind the alternator, like you see most people doing, pushing the motor forward, and you release this. So I only ratcheted it a couple of times, so there's not too much tension on it. But this is what I do to get to the back of the motor. So you don't keep a you don't keep a piece of wood here blocking your way. But look how much room I got. I got so much room now to do everything. Okay, first thing we're going to do, since we got the ignition wires out of the way, is we're going to get these down here, which these are fuel injection line release tools. They're also used for AC lines and various other things on cars. And we're going to release the fuel lines from the motor. Slide it over like this. What you do is you take your left hand and you push the hose forward while you push this in, you'll feel a click sound, and then you pull back the hose, and the hose comes out. Now, be sure to depressurize your fuel system before you do this, because if you don't, you will get sprayed with fuel. Now, just to let you guys know, if you guys don't know how to do that, look on the fuel rail. The fuel rail is here, and back here there's usually a Schrader valve that looks like a tare valve, and you poke that with a flathead screwdriver or a needle nose plier or something, and you put a rag on top of it while you do it, and it drains the gasoline. Well, it relieves the gasoline pressure. Or you could open up your fuel door and turn the fuel cap, and you could wait about 15-20 minutes for the pressure to die out on its own. I pulled this, there was a little bit of fuel pressure in there, so it's okay now. Just make sure it doesn't spray all over the place. You gotta disconnect all of the wires, all of the connecting wires, like the throttle position sensor, the idle air control valve. Alright, over here we're going to have a big wiring harness connector. And be very careful, some of this stuff's never been taken off before. The back bolt has a 14mm nut, and the one you'll see up top is a 15. I'm sorry, 14. Flathead screwdriver for this one, because the terminal that plugs into the side of the alternator, you could only get to it by going in between the power steering lines. So just gonna give you guys a heads up. You gotta take this harness and we'll put it off to the side. We got a little vacuum line here. Now these are the hardened plastic ones, so you gotta be careful. So take your flathead screwdriver and just wiggle it and pry at it right here. You don't want to break anything. Okay. Well, so we're going to take the coil packs off. That's pretty self-explanatory. They're 10mm bolts. There's one here, and it looks like there's one here. Now since we disconnected all the electric, all we have to do is just take the whole thing off. It's going to be the coil pack and the modulator all at once. We're going to want to take this off, the map sensor, which is right here, and anything else that pertains to taking the top of the motor off. Right here, since we got the electrical nest out of the way, it's pretty self-explanatory to what has to be taken off. Still trying to figure out how to get that coil pack assembly off? There are two 13mm nuts that are by the exhaust manifold that lead straight down. You need to use a long extension and a long socket to get it off, but it works. You'll see it. You got to look behind the engine, and you follow the back of the coil pack straight down, and you'll see one right below the transmission fluid dipstick and the other one on the opposite side. In case you guys are wondering how to get the throttle cables off, basically all you really do is you take the throttle itself and you max it out, and you take the wire that's coming out, you follow it over, and this little bar that's inside here, you just slide it out. Pull the tab out and move it over, just like that. There's a tab right down here. On the other one, it's on the top. Take the flathead screwdriver, oops, pull it out, and slide it over. Now this line goes down to the transmission. I'm going to want to replace this because it looks a little broken up. Alright, so now we just got to get a couple more things. Alright, before we go removing any brackets or anything like that that are attached to the serpentine belt system, what we want to do is we want to remove the tension from the serpentine belt. So get yourself your 14mm, and what you're going to do is you're going to place it right at the top here. There's going to be like a little square here. Now you can do it with this, or you can do it with your ratchet. This part of the ratchet, there's a place for it, and it's right here. See how it goes in? And what you do is you can lift it up, and that moves tension. Just want to show you guys something. You see this belt tensioner? How it's moving like that, side to side? That's a bad belt tensioner. We're gonna have to replace that. It's on its way out. So if you got a long breaker bar, take it and push it up. While you push it up, it relieves the tension, and you can take the belt off. If not, use a 14mm open end wrench right at the end and pull it up. Some people have tools, have these special serpentine belt tools where you can, where it just attaches in there and it's got huge leverage on it. You just go like that, because some tensioners are damn near impossible to get out. While we're at it, we'll check the serpentine belt. This is a bad belt too. And whenever you have a shiny belt, or you look in here and it's cracked, you see cracks, replace the belt. Alright, so I got this loose. That was a 13mm. And now, it's, unless you have a swivel, one of those swivel head ratchets and sockets, it's a little difficult to get in here through the lines. So just get an open end 13mm, or use this side. Give it a couple turns. Okay, a lot of people forget to put these brackets back sometimes. So since I still need to get that 10mm off, what I'm going to do is remove this, put that back up here. Another bolt that's got to be cleaned. Alright, so we're going to need our 13 one more time. And it smells terrible. Ugh. So this is what we do here. The first alternator bracket we're going to take, we put the bolt back on, and we take the bottom bolt, put it through, take our bolt that was sitting on top of it originally, put it on, and this is how we're not going to forget about it. There are so many people and so many jobs that I've seen where people forget about this bracket, or they lose the hardware and stuff. So now that we got it together, I'm going to put it in our trunk. And if you want, you can take the blue tape and label it to where it went. But I got the video here, so I can just reference it again. Not that I'm going to forget. Like this. Top alternator bracket. Alright, now we're going to get to that other alternator bracket. And I'm going to have to move the camera so you guys can see it. So, this is the other alternator bracket, and this one's an interesting one. It's got a 13mm nut right here, and then it's got a 10mm bolt holding on these power steering line retainers, and then right underneath it, it's probably going to be another 13mm. So, alright, so we got that other bracket out. The one from the alternator I put up, and the one here I'm putting in too. I just got to rescue the bolt that fell in under the intake manifold. So before I put that in the trunk, I'm going to leave it off to the side. And now we're going to take the alternator off. So there's one bolt that's holding in the alternator, and it's on the bottom, and you guessed it, 13mm. There we go. Alright, here's our alternator. Here's the nut and bolt we just took off. Put everything back. Guys, believe me, you could sit there and say, oh, I'll remember. You won't. Some people don't. Make sure that's in there, that's important. so we don't lose it, so we don't have to go crazy buying hardware. We'll throw her in. Alright, for this step, now what's next is we're going to take the power steering pump out. So we're going to have to make some room over here. We don't necessarily have to do this, but yes you do, because I'll explain that in a minute. First of all, what you're going to need for this section over here is you're going to need a 13 millimeter, you're going to need a 13 millimeter socket, you're going to need a 10 millimeter socket, a flathead screwdriver, and that's it. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to take your 13, 1, 2, 3, take it off, is you're going to take your 10 millimeter I told you about. There's going to be a 10 millimeter nut, matter of fact, here it is, a 10 millimeter nut that's holding the top piece in. Then you're going to take your flathead screwdriver, and there's going to be these push pins, and you're going to take your flathead screwdriver and you're going to pry the top of it, and then you're going to pull it out, and it looks just like this. And you got one more, which is a little bit bigger, and that's going to be directly on the bottom here. Then you're going to take your flathead screwdriver again, and you're going to unscrew the this return line hose. And this is pretty disgusting. I'm taking this out because this has to be thoroughly cleaned. It's disgusting in there. And if your intake manifold went, or your head gasket just like mine, it's disgusting. And you're going to want to clean everything out so you have a nice healthy engine. You're going to do the same thing up here on the radiator. The reason why you just don't leave this hanging and you want to take this whole thing off is because one time I left this hose on and I actually broke this. There's this little piece that this attached to on the radiator, and I broke it. And guess what? You got to get yourself a new radiator, or you have to bring it to a radiator shop if you break it. I'm going to pull this out of the way, move it off to the side, take all your pieces, all your bolts and everything like that, put it back in their spots so you don't lose it. Look how much room there is. You can actually clean up all this shit if you want to. So we're going to get ready to take the pump out. Alright, here are the two power steering lines you got to remove. This bottom one here is your pressure line, and that is a 16 millimeter. And the top one is held in by one of those hose crimp clamps. So what you need is a 16 millimeter, and you need a pair of pliers to get these two off. Do yourself a favor, before you remove this pressure line, have something underneath the car to either catch the fluid or drain the fluid out of the reservoir with a turkey baster or something. And what you want to do is you want to push that way. That's the way you're going to want to go, not the opposite way. That's tightening it. And the best thing to do is replace the O-ring on the power steering line, because as you can see, you see all the fluid. Well, you see all the debris on there. It's not the hose that's bad. It's actually the O-ring inside that's leaking all over the place. As I said in the beginning of the video, these 3100s, they're a joke to work on. Don't get discouraged by them at all. They're really simple to work on, especially when you just move a couple things like an overflow reservoir. Anything you need to do, you remove the reservoir and that bracket, here it all is, right there. So, removing a power steering pump is pretty easy. First of all, you line up the holes with the bolts. There's 3 bolts in there, which I took out already. And what you're going to need is, you guessed it, a 13 millimeter socket with an extension. You don't have to get an extension this long, but this will do. And what you do is you find 3 bolts, which you could use either hole you want. Do yourself a favor, do not turn the pump this way. You turn it that way, fluid's going to come out and make a mess. Always turn it this way. The fluid won't come out. You grab her, wiggle her a little bit, and she comes out. Then you can take the reservoir and everything else and bring it over to your cans and just empty the bitch out. And we'll put fresh new fluid in the end. This pump's in pretty good shape. And like I said, don't turn it counterclockwise because it's just going to spit out everywhere. Alright, so here's our power steering pump. Here's the fluid that we drained out of it previously. And what we're going to do, counterclockwise. Alright, next step is we're going to take this out. This is the line, I believe that, yeah, this is the heater core line. It starts right here. It's a big metal line that runs across, goes under the throttle body, and then to rubber hoses. And then rubber hoses go into the heater core. Tools you're going to need, you're going to need your ratchet, you're going to need an extension, you're going to need an 8mm socket, you're going to need a flathead screwdriver, you're going to need a pair of pliers, and of course, you're going to need your 13mm socket. The 8mm is going to be for this. The pliers are going to be for this. Taking them back. And what you can do is, what I usually do is I grab the hose while it's on the metal piece and I wiggle it back and forth. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you could always use a flathead screwdriver. So you want to get that with the 8mm, get that with the pliers, then you want to go all the way around and get that hose as well. Then you're going to take your 13mm with extension. There's going to be a bolt right here, right next to the dipstick, that you're going to have to loosen up. Be careful with that because that one's by the exhaust manifold. And there's going to be one right under the throttle body like that. Once all that's removed, as you can see it's loose already, you're going to be able to take it out. Alright, so we got her out. Oops. I always kick my feet everywhere, I hate it. We really have nothing to hold on to except for maybe this clamp right here, which I really should replace all the clamps because these things have been in here since '95, so I'm going to put tape on it so it doesn't go anywhere. We're going to clean that. We're going to clean this up before we put it back in. Probably get a new hose. That hose is the original hose, so well, alright, in the trunk, and we'll move on to our next thing. Alright, now, for our next step, it's time to take the intake plenum off. So, for this step, we're just going to need a 10mm socket and a ratchet. We go around, take it all off. It's really simple, but here's some things you got to remember. First of all, we got this 10mm bolt all the way to the right of the oil fill cap. It's got the loom separators on this side. This one has a little tab piece on it for an electrical harness. The other one in the back here is a loom separator again, and that's it. So we want to be really careful, and we want to make sure that when we put the bolts back in, these three things go in the spots that they belong to. So once you unbolt it, you're going to want to pry it just a little bit. I pried mine with my hands, and it came off really good. And then you just grab it, and she comes right off. I'm going to put it off to the side here, and we're going to label it and put it away. Alright, next on the list is the fuel rail, and that's a joke. You get a 10mm with an extension and your your ratchet, loosen them up, which I already did already. You got one 10mm here, and you got another 10mm here. Put them off to the side, and then this is where the extension comes in. You got one 10mm right here holding the fuel lines together. Alright, fuel rail is released. Dump this fuel. Alright. These O-rings gotta be replaced. Okay, next we're doing the valve cover gaskets. Why? Because the valve cover gaskets are actually a part of the intake, the lower intake manifold. So what you do is you grab it, you pull it forward like this, and you lift up. That's how you take it. That's how you take the front one out. And this is bad. These fluids really mixed in. I'll show you guys in a minute. Look at that. Looks like someone blew their nose inside my engine. Ugh. There we go. Now guys, these are the original valve cover gaskets. So we're going to replace them. Even though they don't look that bad. Alright, so this is the last part of removing the lower intake manifold. And here are the tools that you're going to be needing for this. You're going to be needing some extensions. And you're going to be needing a 10mm socket. You're going to be needing a pry bar. Also, you're going to be needing a pair of needle nose pliers or something a little like this. I'll get into that in a minute. And you're going to be needing a 13 and a 14mm. I believe it's a 14mm. We got a little surprise coming up on the end. That right there, that is attached to the intake manifold, and the bracket it's attached to is attached to the cylinder head. So therefore it goes nowhere unless you remove it from the cylinder head. There's a couple of ways you can go about this. You could do things like remove this. This is a quick disconnect. You could do that as well. Or there's a little bolt. Be careful with that EGR tube. There's a little bolt right underneath here. In order to get that out, you're going to need your little tool here, because right here is going to be one of those little push-up nubs that a wire is connected to, because the wire hangs out right over there. Instead of ripping it off, put your pliers on it, give a little bit of a squeeze, and with your finger, push it down. And this is what it was. This. That was sticking up there, and if you do not move that, forget about getting to that bolt, because it's a pain in the ass. Alright, once you get it free, this hose part that you just got free, you're going to wiggle it around and it'll let you move it off to the side. We're going to replace this after we get it out before we put it back in, because that's another thing that's prone to dying. Look at that. That's just from touching the intake manifold, the inside of it. Check this out. Well, this is the intake manifold, and this is a blown intake manifold gasket. The gasket's still on the engine, so I'm going to take pictures. Check them out. Alright, sorry about that. What you guys are going to need for this part of the job is you're going to need a razor blade. Let me back that up a little bit. You're going to need a razor blade. You're going to need some brake clean. I bought about 4 cans. Rubber gloves. As you can see, shop towels. You're going to need a lot of them. And, by your choice, if you want, a mask. Goggles are mandatory. You also don't have to do that. But you gotta remember something. You're gonna be breathing in these fumes, okay? First off, if your garage doesn't have a ventilation system, you need to open up that door, okay? So when I begin to use this stuff, I'm gonna be opening up the door and I'm gonna be cracking the window. Even though it's 38 degrees outside, this stuff is extremely explosive, so that doesn't work with my heater. 2, this stuff in an enclosed area will burn your eyes. Now you're going to be spraying this, and this comes out really fast. You spray it up against metal, I can't tell you how many times this stuff has ricocheted back into my eyes. You really need the eye protection. This I use for any job that I do that involves high odor chemicals, like working with gasoline, working with brake cleaner, working with sheetrock, anything. I always use this mask. So let's take you off the camera, show you a little bit about our job here. Alright, first of all, I started cleaning. What I did here is I took an old set of gloves, stuffed them in here, and I took a rag, stuffed it over here, and I concentrated on just this side. And this side was completely black, and it was full of that oatmeal stuff. So you want to clean all that stuff up. And what was right here was a huge thing of what do you call it? Silicone. So we got to replace that bead, and what we have to do is the surface right here and the surface here. We got to scrape down, get all nice and clean. I already started getting this clean. You spray the wipers with the brake clean. Just make sure you don't get it inside the combustion chamber. And pretty much what we're going to do is I take a saturated rag full of the brake clean, and I just wipe up the stuff, all the sludge and the white stuff. I've been working on it for a while now, so it's gotten a lot better. So you gotta have clean mating surfaces, and you just gotta get all the gunk out of here. So now replacing the gaskets. This looks like you gotta undo the push rods, because push rods will hold it back. I tried a couple of ways on getting it out, but it don't work that way. So let's finish cleaning up, and then once we clean up the motor, we get to the other parts that we gotta clean that are in a lot worse condition. And this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it with the brake clean. You guys could use other methods, like maybe engine bright or something. But remember, mask, well ventilated area. Look at acorns. Make sure you clean here nice and good, because that's where the new gasket's going to go. Alright, so now since we put the new intake manifold gaskets on, the next thing that we're going to do is, before we sequence the valves, before we tighten and tune up the valves, we're going to replace the distributor O-ring. Definitely leaking. get your 15mm. Put this off to the side. This is where the distributors used to be on these cars, so since it's a distributorless ignition, this is just a remnant. Gotta work at it a little bit. I've gone back and forth a lot. Right up here. It's an O-ring. It used to be rubber, and 9 times out of 10 you're gonna have to crack it off. So you can take it off with a flathead screwdriver, or find another way to just get in there and just pry it off. There we go. See how it's split? Look at that. That used to be an O-ring. And the Felpro kit that you buy comes with a new one. So put this off to the side. Clean the area off as best as you can. If you got some of your brake clean up the inside there. Reinsert the new O-ring and drop it back in. Alright, so here are the intake manifold gaskets. They're right in here, and the only way to get them out is you gotta loosen up these rocker arms. You don't have to loosen them up all the way to where they come out, but you could just loosen them to where you could have this moved. And what you do is you lift them up, bring them forward, out comes the gasket. The old gasket is out. So check this out. This is the new lower intake manifold gasket. Metal, really thick rubber. And here's the original. Plastic flimsy junk. Alright. Check out the difference. Giant difference. A lot more beefier. Now it says not to use any adhesive, so make sure all the tabs are down. Putting our push rods back in. And we want to put them back where we found them. This is an old method. Some people still use it. But I'm taking a half a quart of transmission fluid and I'm putting it down the engine. Why transmission fluid? Has anybody ever seen transmission fluid? Or the inside of a transmission when you take it apart? Transmission fluid is one of the best detergents you could buy. See all that white stuff? That's all seeping all the way down. This is the stuff that I couldn't get and the stuff that was stuck inside the lifters. So it's all coming down. I'm going to start to add oil and then I'm going to spin the motor. Alright, I'm going to start to add oil. So basically what you do is, we're going to be changing the oil twice, so we got our cheap oil, we put our half a quart of transmission fluid in, now we put our cheap oil filter in, and now we're going to put our cheap oil in to lubricate everything. Alright, tonight we're going to be putting new seals in the fuel rail. Anytime you take the fuel rail off, and if it's the first time the fuel rail has been taken off, you're going to want to replace the injector O-rings, because they do take a beating in there all those years. Here's what the injectors look like. I'll bring it up to you guys. Alright. These O-rings, there's two sets of them. Well, for one injector there's two O-rings. There's one that goes down here, and there's one that goes right up here, and you got your retainer clip, and you could take these off. It's really easy. All you do is push them forward, and then they're hard to get to. You could use a flathead screwdriver. So when you take them off the rail, when you take them off the rail, you see I got one. I left one just to show you guys what to do. You lift the side a little bit. Comes out. And that's how it's done. Since we have all the gaskets out of the fuel rail, I'm going to take a flathead screwdriver and we're going to go in the fuel rail, and we're going to take the inner gaskets that were once on top of the fuel injector and make sure we just get all the gaskets out before we go any further. Now, this is entirely up to you if you want to do this, but right here there's a Schrader valve, and the Schrader valve you can replace. My car has very low miles on it, so I'm going to leave this alone and it's not leaking. But usually when you replace, when you get the fuel rail apart, it's always good to R&R everything that you can. Next thing I want to point out is, if you don't have to take this harness off the fuel rail, don't take it off. There's a couple of reasons for that. This car's fuel system is a sequential port fuel injection. That means if you don't put these injectors back where they belong, the injectors aren't going to fire right. So they're on by two tabs right here. Leave them exactly where they are. Even tape them to the edges here, or do whatever you can just to leave them in their spots, because you don't want to get these mixed up. So we're going to move the fuel rail off to the side, and then we're going to replace all the O-rings on the injectors. So pretty much, well, this one still has the top one, but most of the top ones will be off the injector because they get stuck in the fuel rail while coming out. So what you can do is you could take this, you can cut them, which makes it easier for them to roll off. Sometimes they get stuck on because they've been on for a long time. Take it off. Bottom one. That's one done. Put it off to the side. And you just repeat it for the rest of the injectors. And we throw them out. Is the intake. You'll see it move, and once it goes up, you'll see. Once you see this going up after the intake moved, that's when we're at top dead center. See it going up? Okay, here we go. Intake for number one. Okay, we're going to be at top dead center. Here we go. Coming back up. Here we go. Intake for cylinder number 4. Alright. Okay, here comes intake for number 2. Going down. Alright, now wait for it to come back up. Here we go. See, it's pushing it up. Alright, we're at top dead center. Alright, so here we go. We're getting ready to put the lower intake manifold back on. This is your chance to do any last minute cleanups and you know, preparations, because this is it, guys. So I'm going to take black RTV sealant. Your Felpro kit will come with a little tube, but I'm not messing around with this because I'm definitely never taking this off again. So right here. Both sides I'm gonna do the other side. Some of you may be saying that's a lot of silicone, but it's actually not. It's actually exactly what I peeled off. This stuff stinks. I hate this shit. Okay. Now we're gonna put the intake manifold back on. Make sure all your bolts are clean and everything. So your last chance. Well, my last chance. And you know, naturally, everything you don't want to get in the way was gonna get in the way. Alright, she's in. Don't forget to silicone these little gaps right here. That's the way they were from the factory. That's the way you gotta do them. Alright, for those of you at home, take a look at this. This is the torque sequence you gotta do. I'll take a snapshot of it. But 1, 2, 3, 4. You gotta do it in this sequence, even tightening it and torquing it. So here we go. Alright, so I grab my Loctite, and what we gotta do here now is make sure your threads are clean on the long bolts. Dab a bit on the threads. Don't go crazy. Start dropping them in. Well, I hope that all went good for you like it did for me. Now for my next trick, the heater hoses. Install the heater hoses again, right here. Just move the EGR tube out of the way. Be careful, you don't break this EGR tube, it's quite expensive. Alright, this is where I neglected to tell you guys I took the thermostat out, and I'm leaving it out. And the reason for that is when I get the car running, I want to flush out the cooling system thoroughly. And I want to add a additive. So for now, we're going to leave it out for a little while. But let's put the fuel rail in. Alright guys, the fuel rail is installed. Just to let you guys know, take a couple of minutes out of your time and take the injectors off the rail and place each injector in the lower intake manifold. Make sure you use a lot of Vaseline. Plop them in there. Don't disconnect them, because remember this is sequential port, so you got to keep all the wiring correct on each injector. Then place the rail on top of the injectors. Before you do, make sure you put Vaseline on there, and they just, like butter, like complete butter, they go right on, and the two 10mm bolts sink right in, and we don't have to worry about leakage or anything. Next is putting the fuel lines in. I don't think you installed something wrong, because see that clip on the two metal wires? Metal hoses with the 10mm bolt? What you have to do is you have to get it in line with the bracket that's attached to the cylinder head, and it actually slides in and the bolt goes over it, and you could bolt it to the bracket that's on the cylinder head. So don't think you installed something wrong. You just got to play with it a little bit. So now we're going to install the fuel lines and take it to the next step. Alright, so we're installing the new valve cover gasket, and we're going to install the rear gasket first. Well, the rear valve cover first, which this stuff looks pretty good. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Put the new gasket on, and put the rear valve cover gasket on. Don't you look beautiful? So, next on the list, it calls for you to install the generator. Well, today it's called an alternator. And this is where your proper tear down pays off. Top alternator bracket, all intact. The lower one attached to the alternator. So, if you listened to me in the beginning, and you labeled everything and put everything together in a way like I said so in the trunk, this is going to go by in a breeze. Alright, so pretty much we're doing some finishing touches on the Grand Prix. We're putting the EGR in. Going to put the serpentine belt on, the coil packs and ignition wires, upper radiator hose, upper dog bones, and we're going to top off all fluids and crank it over for the first time in 5 days. So we got the old gasket on here. You want to be sure to peel this off, and if it doesn't come off that easy, what you want to do is you want to use a wire brush, or if you're lucky and have one of these, use this. This is a bench grinder, but it's a bench grinder on a stool. So it's pretty much a stool grinder. Makes the job go by really quick and turns shit like this into really clean looking stuff. So let's work on cleaning this up and also cleaning the bolts on here. Remember, every bolt that you take off, this is not too bad compared to the intake manifold bolts, but every bolt you take off you want to clean. You want to clean really good, because some of these things you got to Loctite and you just don't want dirty threads. So let's clean it up. EGR. This is what your EGR should look like after you clean it. Now, I didn't do this with the machine. I actually did it by hand. I did it with some sandpaper and a wire brush. And the reason why I did it like that is I know that most of you do-it-yourselfers out there aren't going to have a bench grinder. And I shouldn't say most of you, but a good portion of you guys aren't going to have it, and you're just looking for the quick way out, you know, to fix this and not have to buy a bunch of shit. So, guys, it should look like this. Okay, there's a little metal residue left over from the old gasket, but as long as you just achieve the smooth surface all around, no residue and no gasket, you're fine. Then torque it to 18 foot-pounds. Now we're going to put the rest of the accessories on. Like we got the EGR valve on. Now we're going to set up the throttle body cable and, you know, all the vacuum lines, the wiring harnesses, button up the alternator and reattach the alternator line, the line and terminal to the alternator. Make sure the alternator brackets are tight. The map sensor we're going to put back on. The ignition control module, well, the coil packs we're going to put back on. So right now we're going to focus on doing that, and pretty much if you watch my video, you do it in reverse order. It's really simple. And once we get everything on, including the dog bones, we're going to do the ignition wires together and the serpentine belt, and then we're going to fire her up and see what happens. Alright guys, we're back. So pretty much we got the whole engine together, minus our overflow tank and our air box and our dog bone mounts. Those are the last couple of things we're going to do. But before we do that, we're going to do the ignition wires. Now, if you remember, in the beginning of my video, I labeled all of the ignition wires. Well, here it is. Here's the firing order. This is cylinder number 1. It's in the back passenger side. 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. Coil packs right here that sit up here. Here's each and individual one, which one fires what. The coil pack over to the left by the alternator does 5 and 2. The one in the middle, 3 and 6. And the one on the driver's side, 4 and 1. So since I labeled the wires, which I hope you guys did, because if not, then you have to measure everything out. Because now our only issue is length, and it's not really an issue. This is basically what you do when you're replacing wires. I put all my wires where they're supposed to be. So the number 5 wire went on the number 5 coil pack. Number 2 went on the number 2. You get my drift. Now I take, after I replace my spark plugs, which I did, I take my new spark plug wire and I lay it out just like this. And I'm going to start off with the number 5 cylinder. So the number 5 cylinder I know is in the back all the way on the driver's side. Number 5 is the first one on the left on the passenger side. So have something like this. If you guys want to pause the video for a second and take a look at this, this is what it is. So we're going to start off with cylinder number 5 from the coil pack. Take it off, number 5. We go over here to our new ones. Let me see. This is pretty much how we match it up. Okay, this is too long. That's going to be too long. That's going to be too long. This should be it. Alright, if it's slightly bigger, put it off to the side and just try one more. And if you keep getting like really shorts, real shorties like this one. Actually, that's a bit exact. That's exact right there. Bring it up a little bit. Mine's a little tiny bit short. Doesn't hurt to go through them all. Alright, this is way too long. So it's really down to these two. So pair them up. This is like a perfect match right here. Okay, so the number 5 cylinder, we take the old wire, throw it off to the side, take our new one, put it on the coil pack. Make sure you hear that click. So it's here we go. It's on the number 5 cylinder. Now we gotta put it on the actual number 5 spark plug. So that's actually all the way back here. Now I'm going to do cylinder number 2, which is the next one right after 5. This is a long one. Nope. Almost. I'm going to go with this one. Yep, that's just about right. Now we're going to take a number 2 old one, throw it away. I make the mistake sometimes of taking the old wire and putting it back down like I just did right here. So just be careful. Like, these are like the identical wires. So hold on to the old one. I make that mistake so many times. Like, I'll put a new wire set in, and one wire will be old still because I actually held it in my hand while transferring it over. All right, we got a match. Throw this down on the ground. All right, so we're doing the number 2 cylinder. So number 2 is in the front, and I'm doing it the stock way. So I gotta route it through. So, okay, I'm gonna route it through the front. Cylinder number 2 is all the way over here. So route it this way. Route it that way. That way. Looking good. Cylinder number 2. Wait for the click. There we go. Sometimes you won't hear the click, you'll feel it. And for any of you guys out there that work on cars, you know what I'm talking about. Now it's also written, if you have the original coil packs in your car, the cylinder number that the coil pack fires is actually written on it. Some cars do have that, some cars don't. So So the next cylinder is number 6. Oh, look at that, we got a match on the first shot. Throw that one off to the side. Ooh, I don't like the way that electrode looks. Guys, keep a little bit of sandpaper with you, just in case. Got an electrode right there on the coil pack that was really dirty and dull. You don't want that. Make sure you get it nice and neat, especially if this is a customer's car. Careful. Alright, just let the engine back. I don't have all the time in the world, but it took me a week to do it. If I did it non-stop, it would probably take me about 2 days to do this job. A day and a half. It would probably take me a day to do this job. Damn. Maybe I should just leave the dog bones out. Alright. I'll put the dog bones in before we clean up. You guys don't want to see that clean up. Now, I have a half full yellow canister, and every once in a while you hear some gurgling. If you see on your car, it says, this vehicle requires a special coolant fill procedure. Well, there's a way that GM does it, and there's a way I do it. And the way I do it has never given me a problem. It's very similar to the way GM does it. But basically, you have 2 bleeder screws. You have one right here by the thermostat, and you got another one right up here. What I do is I fill this up halfway after the cooling system has been filled, and I take the top radiator hose. And I squeeze it. That helps get all the air out. I do the same thing on the bottom hose. Okay, now, what's good about these bleeders is that when you crack them open, you'll hear all the air. It'll hiss, and then you'll see the air you'll see the coolant come out. That means you don't have a lot of air in there. I'm still going to do the process, but this is a really efficient system. Now, just so you don't confuse anything for leaks, the valve is usually right here. So listen. Hear that? That was a shitload of air. A lot of people don't do it, and a lot of people, they lose the head gaskets by this way. By doing it that way. Here's the bleeder. You see the reason why we keep the coolant half coolant in here? Because it's putting mild pressure on the system. This is actually something we have to undo with this. Ready? That was just a little bit. Tighten it back up. Now we're going to hit the other side one more time. Usually what some of the service manuals say is they want you to run the engine for like 15 minutes, then shut it off, then do this bleed procedure. But I do it when the engine's stone cold, and then I start it up, and I let the thermostat open up, and I let all the air come out of here. But I'm not going crazy with this because I gotta let the, you ready? Okay, it's just straight water coming out now. Alright, so we're done. Now, the van takes its turn in the garage. Bye-bye, van, for now. And there she is running. I'll show you what the finished results is supposed to look like and sound like. Give me a sec. Alright. Before you go anywhere, put your air box in. I got mine in my trunk. But this is what it looks like. And this is what it sounds like. You shouldn't hear any ticks. Nothing should be hanging. Everything should be just the way you see it. The coolant is absolutely beautiful. Nice green color. And guys, if you could find a place to get a new overflow reservoir, let me know, because I tried to clean that the best that I could, and you only get it a certain bit, and then that's it. So let's take her for a drive. So nice to be using this radio again. I almost have it paid off on my credit card. Alright. She's running great. Steady idle. Great temperature. I've never seen a temperature like this before. It was always up past 210. But then again, it's always going to be low because it doesn't have a thermostat in it. And remember, I didn't put the thermostat back in because I want to flush the cooling system out. So I'm going to put an additive in the cooling system and, you know, to clean it out. So let's take her for a drive. Oh my God, the sun. Oh, fuck, I got green. Let me get into that lane. Wow, you can hear everything now that it's nice and quiet.
I'm a little bit rusty and I think my head is clear. My hand that's touched me, and I feel like something's gone again. And I'm a little bit angry. Well, this ain't over. No, I'm not here. Now while I still need you around, you don't know me. I wanna push you around. Well, I will. Well, I will. I wanna push you down. Well, I will. Well, I will. I wanna take you for granted. I wanna take you for granted. would take. Story crystal method lifts you up until you break, it won't stop. Then come down and keep stop with the tick-tock rhythm. Above for the top and then a bumped up.
Alright, YouTubers, so that was the ride. You shouldn't have any problems. It shouldn't overheat. It shouldn't do anything but just drive like a normal car. Maybe in better running condition than it was before. But anyway, that is how you do an intake manifold gasket. I'm sorry for the long video, but remember, I have to make a video for everybody. You got to remember that there are some people out there that can't afford a mechanic, and they want to know how to do it step by step, you know, every little detail. So I hope it didn't bore the I don't want to cuss, sorry. I hope it didn't bore the crap out of you guys, but like I said, I think the best thing I did was I broke it up into chapters. So, YouTubers, this is 95 Speed GTA. Be sure to check out my website. I'm still building it. It's going to be a while, but it's somewhat there. Check me out at 95speedgta.com. That's 905speedgta.com. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.